That was the week for July the 29th, 2022. I was away last week, and over the last couple of weeks, or perhaps in July in 2022, this will be our last July show, things are beginning to brighten up. I mean, things were very dark, very depressing in May and June. But July has been a good month for the market. And Keith, the newsletter this week is full of encouraging stories, particularly the one associated with DeepMind. It's a remarkable story and a remarkable company.
Yeah, it was impossible not to make it the headline because the breakthrough they've had is hard to comprehend what the implications of it might be, because there'll be a lot. But they basically predicted the structure of 200 million different proteins that are essentially the building blocks of the human body. And whenever there's illness, figuring out these proteins always stands in the way of healing them. So by predicting these proteins, the structure of them, they basically they've published a database with everything in it. So anyone in the world can go and look at these proteins in this database. So medical science has been gifted, a massive leap forward in understanding.
A couple of thoughts on that. Firstly, how does that connect with the Human Genome Project? Is it part of this DNA project, or is it separate? I mean, I know you're not an expert on this either.
Not an expert, but my understanding is it's separate. DNA and proteins need each other, but they're different. And so when you program using CRISPR, when you program DNA at the cellular level, you can change things, and stem cells are all part of that as well. But that's a totally different part of science to proteins. Proteins are like glue in a way that make everything stick together, and viruses glom on sometimes to proteins. So understanding the structure of proteins is a precondition for understanding how to stop something attaching to them as well. So it's
my ears prick up rather cynically, perhaps, when you use the word gift. The idea of DeepMind, which is owned by Google, gifting humanity everything, sounds to me a little suspicious. They're a for-profit company. They're owned by Google, one of the world's largest companies. What's the business model here for DeepMind and Google?
Well, this particular project is a demonstration of DeepMind as they would think about it internally. The purpose of DeepMind is not to discover the structure of proteins. The purpose of DeepMind is to develop generic artificial intelligence that's able to be pointed at almost any problem where there's enough data to learn and there's enough interaction through the data to improve through learning. And so, when they did the Go game and beat the world champion, that was similar. It was just a demonstration of capability against a single goal. So DeepMind is different to, say, Sam Altman's OpenAI. DeepMind is targeting problems. It isn't general AI, whereas OpenAI's goal is to develop general artificial intelligence.
And OpenAI is anything, of course, but open, and anything but free either. I mean, when you go to the OpenAI website, you see that they're supposedly working on behalf of humanity. But again, it's a for-profit company, so we have to be rather suspicious, I think.
Well, you can be suspicious, but I think you also have to have an answer to the question: how could it help humanity?
Yeah, I mean, it could, and it may not. But the idea that these are publicly interested companies working for the benefit of mankind is very problematic. I mean, we heard that with Google and Facebook first time around, and that didn't work out. So I think we have to be a little bit more skeptical.
Tell me how you think about solving that problem. Like, as I travel around the world, and I know you travel even more than me, and I look at different systems of intellectual production. You go to China, for example, and everything comes out of the universities, mostly. Same in Russia. Um, quite a lot in the UK. And in the US, a lot comes out of private ownership.
Mm.
Although that there is still a lot of crossover between private ownership universities, like Stanford had equity in Google. So what's the ideal solution here? Because as long as we got capitalism, most of the money is going to be inside.
Well, I would say I don't know if there is I don't believe in ideal solutions. I just think and I'm not being critical of DeepMind here because I don't know enough about how they presented these discoveries. But I just think that companies like DeepMind and OpenAI need to be a little careful about the way in which they present themselves and their upside. I mean, they're still private companies. How how much do you see DeepMind as a jewel in the Google crown? This is a week in which there's more and more bad news from Meta and from Mark Zuckerberg. Doesn't seem as if the old Facebook has a jewel in its crown. That's why it's having to reinvent itself.
Yeah.
How important do you think DeepMind will be to Google as it moves forward into the AI age?
Well, I think it's incredibly important as a learning place. I don't think it has a business model, frankly. I think Google paid about $300 million for DeepMind when they acquired it, which I always said was incredibly cheap. And I think that after several years of being inside Google, it's still a cost center, not a revenue center.
Yeah, and there's been some controversies of one kind or another, some associated with DeepMind people, some I think associated with cuts in their budget, because I'm not sure everyone at Google was thrilled with this sinkhole for spending money, which wasn't generating revenue. But I assume that there is some long-term plan of integrating the mathematics of DeepMind into the broader Google ecosystem. It's not foreign,
Yeah.
DeepMind, in the way in which
Yeah.
the metaverse seems foreign, for example, to social media and Facebook.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think that Google's history is to figure things out and then figure out how to make money from them. That's what they did with the search engine. When I was Larry and Sergey's partner in 1998, I was selling keywords that came up at the top of Google searches when they got clicked on, and Google wasn't. They had a search engine, but they didn't have a money engine. And
They
that was,
stole your business model, Keith, and the rest is history.
they learned from it. I wouldn't say they stole it, but they definitely learned from it.
Well,
And
people often talk about Google iterating a business model off the search engine, but have they done it with anything else? I mean, I guess they've done it with
Google Doc,
Android. I mean, the YouTube
Google Doc.
business is based on Google search engine principles.
It is, yeah. I mean, YouTube's an amazing library of stuff, and they monetize it through advertising, which irritates the hell out of me. But you can't blame them for doing that because we're not prepared to pay subscriptions.
Well, you would.
I wouldn't actually. I don't pay for. I do pay for YouTube TV, which is their equivalent.
You would pay for unlimited access to Premier League and European football on YouTube. I would certainly. I'd be more than happy, and then I wouldn't have to waste my money on subscriptions to all these other services.
Yeah. In fact, I do pay $70 a month for YouTube TV, which has channels.
Well, we talked about. Let's not go down that sinkhole on sports. But do you think that someone's in charge of Google as they wander into the future? We hear a lot about Zuckerberg, Musk, the Microsoft CEO. We don't hear very much about Google execs. Who's actually thinking about Google for the future? Who's their visionary?
I think they don't work like that. Google's organized much more like a university with departments, with postgraduate students doing research, that then they have an internal kind of marketplace to attract talent to projects. So they're very much more bottoms up through discovery than, say, Apple or Facebook, which are
Mm.
top-down leadership, goal-driven, where engineering works for product and marketing. At Google, product and marketing work for engineering. So it's a very different culture, and it's more pure in some ways, but that means it's less showy. You know, like
And also that I think because of that purity, which you can argue is genuine or not, but it is also generates a lot of friction within the company because a lot of the junior engineers are much purer than sales execs or marketing execs. So
yeah.
one of the interesting things about Google is the internal politics. We talked earlier about the metaverse. Facebook still continues to struggle. You have an interesting link in the essays of the week, Keith, this week, linking the metaverse and AI. Well, what's the connection?
Well, the trigger for this was a common friend of ours, Mike Butcher, at the Glastonbury Music Festival. Saw a pitch from a company called Condense, a UK company, and they were able to get a very accurate rendition of him and his body dancing inside a 3D world without any setup. In his words, it was almost instant. They did it live. And there he was dancing in this 3D world. I may have the video. Well, it won't play here, but it's on YouTube and it's linked. There's a video of him doing it.
But
And
is the video of him at Glastonbury or just Mike dancing?
he's at Glastonbury. Maybe here it is. Look. So this is him. And
Yeah, but that's
now we
could
know
be
it.
anywhere. Could be anywhere. What? Why? I
No,
don't
no,
see the connection between
no.
Glastonbury.
What's amazing is you know Mike, right? That is Mike.
Yeah.
That's his body. That's his face. That's his shape,
Yeah,
and
but it has all the sort of
the
it
movement.
has all the look and feel of virtual reality. So I don't see the Glastonbury connection.
He was physically at Glastonbury, and this company had a stall there. And he went up to the stall, and instantly they were able to put his body, and it's his real body. He was doing the dancing in the real world, and it was being rendered inside this virtual world instantly and accurately. That's almost impossible to do. So it's kind of like magic. It's not. This isn't
Is
a car.
could the DeepMind's model of predictive AI could this be used in a more mundane, down to earth, daily way, like in terms of predicting how Mike Butcher's going to dance?
No, there's no prediction at all. It's copying.
No, but I'm saying it could. I mean, could
It,
AI eventually become predictive as opposed to
it,
sort
it
of?
yeah, it already is. I mean, that's what DeepMind is doing with the structures of proteins. It's predicting them accurately. So the work I do, I predict. Um, I've got a list of 1,000 companies that just did a Series A round within the last 12 months. I predict that 30% of that 1,000 will turn into unicorns, and I'll be right. So we use predictive analytics all the time based on patterns that can be discovered in large sets of data. So yeah, that's exactly what one of the use cases for AI is predictive. But others is if you imagine remote contact, and medicine is the most used example of this, but let's say that an expert in heart surgery has to perform surgery within an hour, but it's on the other side of the world. Technologies like this can bring people into environments where they can control instruments remotely, um, and be seen, and their gestures and movements are accurately rendered through machinery. So at the bottom of it all is two things: there's computation and there's intelligence.
But they'll
Uh,
never turn Mike Butcher into a world-class surgeon, will
we never will, but we could. And he's not even a world-class dancer, according to this video, is he?
they? Well, whatever Mike does is he has a certain magic. Every time I see him, he has a new harem with him. So he's certainly doing something right, Mike. If you're watching, congratulations. Less congratulations on the Facebook front, or the old Facebook. Now it's called Meta front. More bad news with Meta. At what point, Keith, does the situation at Meta become a serious crisis?
Yeah. Well, there's actually a few stories about Meta this week which kind of gel together. The first one is the FTC. Our old friend Lena Khan has actually done something.
Your old friend, I know you're a big admirer of
She's stopping them from acquiring a VR fitness app, um,
her.
on the basis that they're only acquiring it to avoid having to compete with it, which is a huge step outside of the normal bounds of antitrust
Yeah,
laws.
and I'm much more enthusiastic about Lena Khan than you are, but even I will say that it sounds to me like yesterday's war. I mean, really, it's like
Yeah. Plus, it
fighting Germany today and imagining that Hitler's still in control. I mean, Facebook is not a danger.
yeah.
The only
Well,
thing Facebook's a danger to is its own shareholders.
yeah. Well, plus, Andrew, imagine you are one of the founders of this company that's being acquired and we're set to do very well out of it. And now the FTC is stopping you from selling your company. Um, it almost feels like Big Brotherish. Then their
Well,
revenue.
I don't know about that because if they're any good, someone else will buy them. I mean, what's your take on the metaverse generally, Keith? I just wrote a fairly critical piece. My sense is it's still not ready in any way.
Well, I think in order to conclude that, you have to buy one of these. You have to buy one of these. Let me.
Exactly. Where you buy one and they're clunky, no one wants to put those on.
By the way, they
No,
just
no.
put the price up by $100. So if you're going to buy one
Exactly. So what's
today's,
that? An Oculus Rift thing?
that's the Oculus 2 Quest 2, and it's like $400. Now, I bought one because I wanted to understand. The metaverse is way better than you think it's going to be. I'm cynical of it, like you are, and I suspect it isn't a real thing ultimately. Um, that said, it's way better than I thought. You can go to the Netflix theater in the metaverse, and literally you're in this huge auditorium, and there's a big screen at the end, and it's very tangible and very real, and you can see other people in it and gesture to them and stuff. It's way better than you imagine. It's just not a behavior I think most people are going to want to do, other than you know to see what it's like. I don't think it's a behavior, but but the science that creates it is the same science. It's optics. It's the science that enables virtual objects to be put in front of your eyes. Now, I do think there's a future in that.
I
For
don't know if
all,
you linked in the newsletter this week. There was a big piece on Zuckerberg and Meta in the Times about how he's doubling or tripling down on this bet, and it's a betting the company thing. He
yeah,
talked about the inevitable clash with Apple, which makes sense. Um, I don't know what you're hearing down in Palo Alto. I mean, I assume you know some people who work at Facebook. I wonder what the morale is there, whether people are taking this as seriously as Zuckerberg would like.
I don't think the morale can be anything other than confusing, because I think it depends what you're working on, whether you feel upbeat or downbeat. The Meta division lost $2.8 billion this quarter. So it's a $10 billion a year investment, which is huge. Um, at the same time, Meta told all the 50 US newspapers that it pays to put news into the feeds that it's going to stop paying them.
Right. So it seems as if they're fleeing their social media business. They're getting out of it. But Zuckerberg has made a bet, and that he wants to reinvent the company and 3, 5 years as Meta, I mean, social media won't go away. It will be an increasingly unimportant piece in the company.
I think he's confused at this point because Facebook is all about connecting people. That can't change. But this week there was a huge controversy that I cover around Instagram replacing friends' posts with artificial intelligence created posts, and there was a huge backlash from various famous Instagram users saying, "Let Instagram be Instagram again." Uh, so in everything he's touching, he's trying to bring AI and intelligence to human experience, and he's nothing if not a zealot for what he believes in. So
Yeah.
he's driving the ship very hard there. Now, in one way, that's admirable because he is betting the company in the same way Elon Musk has done several times in his career.
But
And
Musk has never done that, turning a company around. He's always done it with startups.
he has, yeah, he's done it.
I mean, has there ever been a case where someone has so dramatically and successfully turned a company around?
Only Zuckerberg, when he bought Instagram and then he bought WhatsApp, both were huge bets.
Yeah, but the WhatsApp thing still isn't clear to me how they make money. And he still didn't dramatically change the company. It remained a social media company, just integrated Instagram. I mean, Instagram is a social media product.
Well, they make money by having human engagement with their products that then spins off into other things. So the fact that there's still 2.7 billion people a month engaged with something that Facebook owns is, I mean, mind blowing, isn't it? So, so he's doing something right, and it's still a big company, and he's making bets. So this headline that says they lost 2.8 billion, you could rewrite that as he bet 2.8 billion on an
I
outcome.
mean, you have to, as everybody knows, I'm certainly not a great fan of Mark Zuckerberg, as most people aren't. But you've got to admire the guy. I mean, he doesn't need to do this. He could just either continue to sort of run the company like Gates and Ballmer ran Microsoft till they had a massive crisis, or just get out and enjoy his money.
Yeah. Well, the contrast this week is with Google. We were just previously talking about Google's crown jewels, but the one thing Google announced this week is that they are delaying the replacement of cookies with new technology until 2024, which means that they're going to milk the old revenue stream as long as they can. And you know, that is in contrast to Zuckerberg changing things that work. He's changing them before he has to. Google isn't even changing them when they need to. So there's a catharsis around Google.
But I don't think that the the Google search business is in as much crisis in the long term as the Facebook social media business, is it?
The search business is great. It's more the distributed search business that requires cookies for targeting. So the
Mm.
centralized search engine is fine. It's what does Google serve when you show up onto my blog and I serve Google ads to you? That requires a cookie that knows something about you, and so
Yeah.
that's what they're preserving.
Yeah, and they've done, and I use this word carefully, a remarkable achievement in terms of customizing advertising. So you have personalized advertising following you around the internet. Everywhere you go, you get served ads that theoretically at least reflect what you're interested in. It's either chilling or remarkable, depending how you look at it. But things are back to normal then, Keith. The markets are up. Amazon reported some good news. Apple
Yep.
seems to be doing pretty well. Its numbers this week were good. Are we over the crisis generally?
I think the Fed interest rate rise this week helped the market take a deep breath. I think there's been 2 quarters of economic shrinkage in the U.S. economy, but marginal. Gas prices are down $1 from the peak, and stock markets have rebounded between 20 and 40% in tech, at least from the bottom. So, you know, there is a kind of a sense of a journey to the other side beginning.
Yeah, you didn't include, I mean, crypto continues to bleed. I saw that Coinbase's value dropped 20%. The SEC seems to now believe that they have a case against Coinbase in terms of enabling
Securities.
illegal trades or illegal products on their platform.
Yeah, but the SEC is full of it on this topic because the SEC is it's like copyright law that was created in the 1600s. Basically, they're clinging on to laws that were designed for different things and trying to apply them to crypto. And in doing that, because they're part of the state, they can be successful in spending time and money prosecuting rather than understanding what's new and trying to legislate for that. So the SEC attack on Coinbase, to me, I'm on Coinbase's side. I think the SEC just needs to catch up, as does the government. The British this week decided that crypto is property. Great, at least that's a decision. What's the US version of that is very, very unclear. And the SEC is using prosecution to make policy, basically, which seems
Well,
like...
you haven't given up on crypto. Your startup of the week is a crypto company. Who are they, Keith?
They're very close to my heart. The startup of the week is called Unstoppable Domains. They raised 65 million this week and became the newest unicorn. Now, what is Unstoppable Domains? When you type in www.yahoo.com,
Yeah.
the .com is part of what's called the root server that runs the whole internet. And there's only one root server that then gets copied. And therefore, there's only one .com. What Unstoppable Domains has done is built a second one. And it's created domains like .bitcoin and lots of others that are not part of the internet root server. It's a parallel universe of domain names. And focus on the crypto world means that it can happily live in that universe without infecting or destroying the primary internet domain name system. And it's been very successful. Lots and lots of people are buying Unstoppable Domains so they can say, my wallet is Keith.Bitcoin, as opposed to some long, string of encoded characters. And so the internet authorities hate them because it's called
So the VeriSign people, they
would hate them. But if
because they have a kind of almost like a monopoly of
they have a monopoly
.coms and .orgs and .tvs.
Yeah.
So what does that do to now .tv, Keith? You told me it was worth millions. Now it's probably worth 50 cents.
All domain names are either worth nothing or a lot, depending on whether there's a buyer who wants them. And I think now TV, there's quite a few possible buyers there.
So what's their business model? Unstoppable? Unstoppable Domains? I assume it's like VeriSign. They charge you for the name.
Yeah, they do. They do, and it's an unofficial competing domain name system.
So what have they done? What's their? It's a technological breakthrough. How have they figured this?
No, anyone could do it. If you've ever set up a computer, one of the things you need is an IP address, and you tie a name to that IP address. So you go to GoDaddy and you say now.tv is this number. They've created using software that's readily available. Anyone could do it.
So what's an NFT domain? What does that mean?
It's something.nft, like something.com.
It could be .com. So what? So it's just a name.
It's just a name, but people want that name. So
why didn't the VeriSign people come up with .nft? They've invented a number. They have .tv. That didn't used to exist.
Well, because it's governed by a body called ICANN, the Internet Consortium for Names and Numbers. And ICANN released new bidding for new top-level domains, they're called, every few years. There hasn't been one for about 10 years now. So there's no supply through the official channels. So these guys have said, okay, we're going to build our own. And VeriSign would never do that because if they did, they'd get kicked out of ICANN and have .com taken off them.
Well, these people have cheek, chutzpah, calling themselves unstoppable with domains. I'm sure the headline writers are waiting for them to have a crisis because then they'll be stoppable. But for the moment, they are unstoppable. There are Startup of the Week and Tweet of the Week, Keith, another unstoppable company, it seems.
Yeah, Tweet of the Week. I thought this was great. Without the 5.7 billion in income from AWS, Amazon would have recorded an operating loss of 2.4 billion. E-commerce is a fun business. This is from CNBC. So what it tells you is Amazon has built an amazing way of funding Amazon.com without having to sell shares. It basically sells hardware and software services in the cloud as a way of funding its core operations, which it can make a loss on. Therefore, if you're Walmart, how do you compete with that? You can't.
Well, Walmart can fund it through their physical stores.
One would think, but if
although
Walmart,
their business is down, is Lena Khan, if she's watching, would her ears prick up in terms of splitting up the Amazon e-store from their AWS business?
well, Apple sell computers and give away the equivalent of Microsoft Office. Any company that tries to enhance its core business in all
So
kinds
that
of.
is a natural split between their e-commerce business and the AWS business.
Well, only if you're not an Amazon shareholder. Why would you split something that works?
Yeah, but that's not an argument on the problem with the antitrust stuff is it works too well. That's why you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is that I think Lena Khan should be looking at Amazon, which is a much bigger danger if in her world than Facebook. I don't know why she's wasting her time with Facebook. So you bullish on Amazon? Is Amazon?
Yep.
Seems to have made again. Post Bezos doesn't seem to have made any difference.
No, well, the leadership team there has been there for decades, and so Bezos or no Bezos, they kind of know their job. So
and what do you make of the Amazon investment in healthcare? Are they serious about that sector?
They got pretty widely criticized for that as being non-core. And I use Amazon as a pharmacy, which is very good, by the way. But Mark Cuban just launched a pharmacy, which is basically you don't use insurance because he sells the drugs for cost, and they're cheaper than the amount that you pay when you're on insurance. So I think that Amazon isn't a monopoly because there's a Mark Cuban, standing there doing stuff that undermines them, and anyone could undermine Amazon if they wanted to. They may not succeed, but they could certainly try.
That's not an argument. Anyone can set up an e-commerce store. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at their business critically. Anyway, that was the week for July the 29th, 2022. I think, Keith, we're back to normal. Digital, technology, Silicon Valley, they all seem unstoppable. Maybe not Facebook, but everybody else. Looks like things are back to normal. So maybe they will remain normal in August. We will see you all in August. Have a good couple of days left in July, and we will see you all next Friday.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye, everyone.